Hi, I'm Jen Barnes, and you're about to experience how to ditch the old ways of doing things, embrace your neurodivergence, learn tips and tricks to function optimally, and love yourself, neurodivergence and all. Welcome to the Self-Loved Woman podcast. Hey, it's Jen. I'm so glad you're here. We're going to have an important conversation today about something I've been seeing in myself, in my private practice clients, in my ADHD women entrepreneur clients, and really in the world. And so if you've been at all feeling overwhelmed or kind of find yourself disconnecting or numbing out because of all the heaviness of things going on in the world right now and over the past several years, and you're ready to, jump off the hamster wheel, exit the matrix, and align with your highest self, then this podcast is for you today. So I want to talk a little bit about how we got here and maybe even what it looks like. You might be like, oh, no, I'm fine. I'm not affected by all this. And what I've noticed in people and in myself is more TV time or streaming time for me, binge watching things, more time on social media, especially doom scrolling, lots of watching videos of horrific events over and over and over. And then, followed by other ways to numb, whether that's alcohol or increased pot use or really, sleeping more, whatever it is. And I'm not here to judge. Like, I get it. People are just trying to cope with everything that's going on around us. And at the same time, I was noticing in myself, like, I am now going through the motions. I am getting up, dragging myself out of bed and like, okay, I have to go to work. And I love what I do for a living, right? Like, I love being a therapist. I love being a coach. I love doing my podcast. And, sure, some of it's probably the ADHD, hygiene stuff. Like, I don't want to do my hair because doing my hair stresses me out, which you can notice I didn't do it today. If when you catch the reels on social media from this, but it was more than that. It was more than the time change. And so I started to really dig deep and take a look at what was going on in myself and others. And here's what I've come up with. So here's some thoughts from a therapist, and we'll get into what to do about this for the bulk of our time together. But I want to talk about first what got us here. I noticed a big shift in 2016, and at least in the States, right? I'm not sure what that was like worldwide, but there was a lot of division and fighting that started here around that time. And just a lot of like high conflict going on. And there's reasons why. And the reality is things went into really high conflict really quickly. And not in a way where things were getting resolved. And to be fair, like, I know some of that conflict was about systemic oppression, things like that, and so, like, I get it. That stuff does need to be fought against. And there was just so much, like, division and difficulty trusting. And I know I lived in a place that had values different than my own when all this went down. And so I noticed, like, walking through the world and being like, okay, how much of what I believe can I share here? And so some of you might live in an area, and now I do, live in an area more aligned with my values, but I wasn't during this time. And so if you were in that boat, it made it really hard to just freely be yourself because it didn't necessarily feel safe. And you've heard me talk, there's a difference between unsafe and uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is having a difficult conversation that needs to be had. Uncomfortable is when you have a long sleeve sweater over a long sleeve shirt and the shirt gets bunched up underneath, right? Like, that's physically uncomfortable. Uncomfortable might be having to have a tough conversation about things that you disagree on. But unsafe is when people are verbally and emotionally attacking people and shaming people and even physically harming people. And so there were, for some of us who were in areas not aligned with our values, things could even feel unsafe. And so I think that was, for me at least, my observations in myself and my clients was kind of the biggest thing I saw. Now, I recognize I'm a white woman. So if you're a person of color, you might be like, yeah, Jen, okay. Well, the rest of us have been suffering the whole time. And that's fair. Like, yes, for sure. And what I noticed is the people that I serve, which at the time were mostly white women, but I have a number of indigenous women that I serve as well, um, started coming in with, feeling more and more stressed right around 2016, is when my practice really, really filled up with a lot of trauma survivors because their trauma was getting triggered by what was going on at that specific time in the world, or at least in the United States. And from there was a lot of conflict for the next several years, and then COVID hit. And that situation, I don't think any of us need to be like, oh yeah, it was no problem, it was easy. That pandemic was rough. Pandemics, of course, are going to be rough. I think what was so hard about it is there was so much misinformation and people not believing each other and trusting each other, and people choosing to do things that they wanted to do that maybe didn't take into consideration other people. And I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of getting into the sides of that issue. That's not what this podcast is about, and it's not why I'm here. But I want to name that was a struggle for people on all sides of the issue, I gotta believe. Maybe it continued to make people feel like, who are my neighbors? Do I know my neighbors? Do they care about me? Do they see me? Some people, again, feeling like their rights were trampled on. Not to mention, we were all scared of dying of this pandemic and stuck at home. And, it was not always an easy time for people. Sure, there were some people who were able to, they're like, oh, cool, I'll just learn a new hobby. And then there were some of us who were like, I know as a therapist, my workload increased substantially. And then there were other people who lost their jobs and were like, how am I going to pay for anything, right? How am I going to eat? And so that was a very, very hard time. And since things have opened up, we've had like two major wars break out in the world, one in Ukraine and then the other one in Israel-Palestine areas. And that it's heart-wrenching if you've been aware of any of it. And what I hear a lot from my clients is just how hard it is to watch, for so many different reasons. And to be fair, it's harder to go through. Like, I'm not in any way being like, oh yes, our pain over here is just unbearable, like while people are dying or losing their homes or not having food or water. And the reality is it is a traumatic experience here as well, because there's a sense of helplessness of like, we want to do something to help people in that situation. And a lot of my clients and I feel like our hands are tied, right? And this isn't to mention things about like the patriarchy or late stage capitalism, which I hear, and climate change, right? Which are things that I hear a lot about from my clients, who are in their 20s and 30s, who are worried about what the world will look like as they continue to grow into adulthood. I know it's stuff I'm certainly worried about, even though I'm 50. And so this is heavy, heavy stuff. And you might be like, great, Jen, this is a cheerful episode. Thank you. But the reason I name all of this is I say it because I want to name it. I want to acknowledge what we've all been through. And like, hey, you come by whatever feelings you're having, honestly, whatever urges to disconnect and numb out, you're coming by this, like super honestly, because it's like, yeah, this is stress. All of this is a lot and I just can't take it anymore. And so then, we do things probably without even noticing it. Like I know I would, until I got the app ScreenZen, I would just find myself all of a sudden I'd be like, oh, I'm doom scrolling Instagram. I had no idea I was doing that, right? Like it was just like somehow my phone was in my hand and somehow the app was open, which is why I started using ScreenZen. Which is amazing, by the way. And thank you to a therapy client of mine who shared it with me. Obviously, I can't say her name, but anyway, it's helped many people. But we come by this super honestly, and I don't want there to be any shame about the patterns that we've gotten ourselves into. And the reality is this is just no way to live. This is just not what many of us came here for. You know, this isn't what we wanted. And so I want to share a little bit about what to do. I've been getting a lot of messages from the universe, and you may or may not believe in that. I do. That's fine. You can call it intuition. You can call it whatever works for you. But I'm getting a lot of like downloads and information from the universe, and like a lot, a lot. And this has come from like a live event I went to in December. This has come through some of the like podcasts I've listened to. It came through when I talked to Eleanor de Passon and read her book. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, listen to it. She's awesome. Not that I'm telling you what to do, but I just invite you to. She's great. We get into some of the wounded masculine that we're seeing, as well as how we can shift more to divine feminine and divine masculine. I've seen it, other places, like in the oracle card readings I do every morning. I'm getting the same cards over and over again. It's almost creepy, right? Because that never happens. I did an astral reading with someone at the beginning of the year, and it was the same exact message. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm even in an intuition kind of program thing, and that is definitely, I'm getting similar messages there. And the message is super clear, and it's threefold, and I want to share because I suspect that I'm not the only one that this message is for. Because if you've been struggling the way that we've been talking about, then I gotta believe this message is for all of us. So part one of the message has been that I am limiting my view of the options available to me. And you might be like, no, Jen, these are the options I have available. And what that means to me is that I've been in my thinking mind, I've been in my doing mind, I've been in my have to find a solution and make sure it works mind. I hate the parts of me they're trying to help. They really are. And the problem is that is not the only way that we figure things out. In fact, a lot of times the solution is bigger than our thinking mind. A lot of times we need to think outside of the box for the type of problems we're facing these days, whether it's in our personal life or, more globally. I can't remember if I'm quoting someone I've taken a program for, if I'm quoting Albert Einstein, or if I'm quoting him quoting Albert Einstein. But it's the idea that the thinking that got you here can't get you there, like where we're going, right? The thinking we've been doing, the behaviors we've been doing that got us into this situation that we're in as a world are not going to get us out of it. And that's true for each of us as individuals in our lives, right? If we're feeling like we're in a perpetual Groundhog's Day, then the thing is like, okay, yeah, what got us here is not going to get us out of that perpetual Groundhog's Day. So we need to do something different. We need to open up our options. And I'll talk a little bit about how we can do that. The next message I've been getting really clearly is that the inner resources that I need are flowing through me right now. And I believe that is true for all of us, that we have what we need. It's just that a lot of times we have parts of us that are scared about what's going on in the world and we can't access it. Deep, deep down, your highest self, your highest, source knows what to do. And if, to be fair, if you're a trauma survivor, you might be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I've never felt that. And that's fair because you might not have. When you grow up with a traumatic environment, it can be really hard to have that sense of self because you have so many wonderful parts who've protected you to get you to where you are today and helped you survive. And, I would say certainly all of us have experienced trauma of the last, 8 years at least, not to mention our intergenerational trauma, the trauma of the world, of how we all, for thousands of years have been fighting wars to get what we want and take land from each other, and fight about whose God is the right God. um, right? And to me, that's our collective trauma. Certainly the, racism and slavery, that is collective trauma. It doesn't just impact Black people because white people are the ones who did it. And that's traumatic too, to have done that to other humans, right? Even if we didn't do it in this lifetime, it's still in our genes. That's all there. And so I guess what I'm saying is we all have all this trauma. And so some of us might be like, Jen, you talk about this highest self that knows what to do and that has these inner resources more than we ever could believe. And I have no idea what you're talking about. And that's okay. You might not. You may have experienced so many hard things in your life that you might be disconnected from it. But on some level, we all have that in us. It's just that sometimes we have to quiet the external noise enough, and sometimes we have to heal the wounds enough to be able to hear it. The third message I've been getting right now is that now is the time to dig in and do the work, that the universe is waiting. The universe is waiting for us. And if you're like, I don't believe in the universe being benevolent, Jen, that's fine. The world is waiting for us, right? The earth is waiting for us to be in right relationship with her. The world of humans is waiting for us to be in right relationship with each other. And now is the time. Now is the time. Certainly that has been the message, the download I'm getting from the universe when I sit in meditation or when I write or go on walks. But even if you think about this logically, this makes sense. As a therapist, one of the things we talk about is therapeutic discomfort. And it's because people generally don't change when things are going well. People don't change until the pain of changing is less than the pain of staying the same, right? Like when the pain of staying exactly this way is worse than the pain and discomfort of changing, then people will change. So to me, it makes sense that right now the universe is like, okay, now's your time, people, because things are pretty shitty right now in the world. Maybe some of us, our individual lives are going okay. But certainly there are heavy, heavy things going on. And there is so much that we can be learning and growing from. Pain helps us grow. I'm not saying that we want to experience pain, but it can help us grow. And so now is the time. And so if you're wondering how to do this work or what to do to be able to do this work, I want to share a little bit about that now. This is going to get spiritual, not religious. And I want to share the difference. There's a difference between spirituality and religion. Religion is more organized, and there's creeds, and there's, books and people telling you what to believe or agreement on what to believe, where spirituality is connecting with something bigger than yourself. And, for me, that's the universe. I believe there's a benevolent universe. I believe in spirit energy. For you, spirituality might mean something different. It could mean nature. I'm reading Braiding Sweetgrass. I think that's the full title, which is just a lovely book. And it reminds me of the communion of being in deep connection with the earth and her gifts. It's just beautiful to see how, this woman shares indigenous culture and the way that they embrace being in right relationship with nature and the world. The earth. So that could be, when I say spirituality, what you mean. Whatever it is, I find that in order to step into something different, we have to quiet the external noise and step into ourselves. And when I say ourselves, I don't mean our little selves. I mean our highest selves. I mean the being within, the drop of consciousness. In yoga, we call this the Atman, right? Whatever it is that you think of it, a dropping into that is where this healing, where this information can come from. how we can get out of the numbing and heal. Now, some of it, to be fair, if you're like, Jen, I've got a crap ton of trauma triggers and I've got all this stuff, then yeah, probably before it's safe to even go there, there may be things that you need to do, like internal family systems or IFS or EMDR or trauma center, trauma sensitive yoga, sensory motor processing, somatic experiencing, art, whatever brain spotting, whatever modality you use with a therapist. Certainly there may be some healing work to do there. And in order to be able to step outside of the matrix, we have to tune in to see what's going on inside. And that might be the layers of our parts, but ultimately it will be with ourself. And the way we do that is we quiet the external noise. We turn off our TVs or streaming devices. We get off our phones. We get rid of the games on our phones. We stop doom scrolling social media. We stop reading dramatic news, right? The only news I let myself have access to is something called Fix the News. It used to be Future Crunch, and it talks about a lot of really amazing things that are actually going on in the world. It's amazing how much good news there is compared to all the bad. It's just that, their saying is if it bleeds, it leads, right? So that's why we only hear about all the bad stuff. So Fix the News is a great newsletter, as is 1440, which is literally unbiased news. It's just the facts. It's like Walter Cronkite style news, to the point where the stories are really, really short. They're like barely a paragraph or two, not more than 10 sentences, because it's just the facts. It's not about the drama and who thinks what. It's not about what the person who wrote it thinks. It's just factual information about what's happened. So anyway, that was a little bit of a rabbit hole, but we get away from those more dramatic news sources where they have, and I use the word news lightly because it's now more commentary on what's happening in the world, right? And we do things instead, like sitting in silence, going for walks in nature. I mean, hugging trees, people, for real, right? We do things like doing more yoga or reading more books, preferably not only books about violence and upset, right? We meditate, we write. There's so many more things that we can do to connect in with our inner wisdom, whatever it is that you call that. And like I said, now is the time. Now, you might be by now thinking, well, what does this have to do with business, and what does it have to do with ADHD? Well, I'm going to tell you that right now. Number one, as ADHDers, we tend to be highly sensitive and highly attuned to energy and what's going on around us. And we also tend to be very easily distracted. And so for us to tap into our inner wisdom, these practices are even more important. In fact, I need these practices just to even move through the day with ADHD. Things like meditation and yoga and writing and daily exercise too, right? But also as entrepreneurs, this is essential because one, if we're bogged down by all the really hard stuff going on in the world, it's going to make it really hard to do the work we need to do. But two, that energy of heaviness is going to come across in our messaging. It's going to come across in the work we do with people. And if you're someone who follows me, chances are your business is one of meaning and purpose, one that helps people. And so, I'm not saying we have to be devoid of any and all stress in our lives, right? But we need to be, continuing to be mindful of it and working on it so that we can serve. The other thing I will say is that as we quiet the external noise and we hear our inner message, we hear our inner wisdom, we even hear spirit maybe talking through us, we're able to align more fully with the people we serve, both when we're serving them, because we get them better, we're more present, right? And we're more grounded, generally speaking, so we're less distracted, but also, not only are we able to be present with them, but when we're creating our messaging to market and to bring people into our world so we can help them, we will hear things from within that are much more aligned than our thinking brain can give us. That's why this time is not just for, feeling better and not numbing out. I mean, you can numb out if you want to, but this will also help your business. And the other thing I want to say is this will help the world. And it will help the world in two ways. One, if we can get more of us entrepreneurs who do amazing things to help others, getting our work out into the world and helping others, then more people are going to be helped and the world will be a better place because of it. And two, the world feels energy. There is an energetic connection between all of us. You know this. If you've ever walked into a room and you're like, "Ugh, it's thick in here," because maybe there's been conflict right before you walked in. We all feel energy. And if our collective energy is one of trauma and fear and anger and fighting, not that we don't have righteous anger, to be clear, like some of us have a very strong reason to be angry. And if we're not working through these things and using that anger to propel us into action and, helping people and doing our work, then we're just putting more anger and more venom out into the world instead of actually healing ourselves and bringing that light to the world to hopefully, get a little esoteric, but raise the vibration of everyone around us. So I am excited to see all of us dig into this work. This week, I took some big steps, like literally yesterday. I took some big steps. I unplugged my TV, like actually unplugged it, which I used to just hide my remotes from myself. And that was kind of working, but lately not as well. So I unplugged it. And it will be a pain in the butt to have to reprogram it. So it's just like, okay, that's gone. And instead, I, started reading more. I deleted all the games off my phone, literally. I got rid of all the news apps on my phone. And then Screen Zen is set up to make it really hard for me to access anything that doesn't bring me light, which is very little. Or that's necessary, right? Like maps and the weather app, like those, whatever. My alarms. Oh, the alarms for ADHD, right? So I invite you on this journey with me. And I will tell you, the first day I did it, it failed horribly. Like truth in advertising. I was like, I must watch TV. And that was before I unplugged, right? Because I've been enjoying watching Bones on streaming. It was a show my mom and I used to watch, so it's particularly enjoyable. But anyway, so I was like, okay, this did not go well. And then the next day I was like, nope, I have to get serious about this. And I sent out an email to my people and was like, okay, here's what we're doing. Here's what I'm doing. You're welcome to join me. And unplugged my TV and made it really hard to do anything other than read, go for a walk, do some yoga, or maybe do a logic puzzle on paper, right? Or color mindfully. Or journal. I think I said writing. And so I invite you to take this journey with me, not because I'm telling you to, but if you're ready to step into more of who you are and step out of all this craziness, I'd love to do it with you. So feel free to comment if that's your plan. You're always welcome to follow me on Instagram. You can find that in the show notes. And I'll be sharing my journey around this there. So that'll be kind of fun. Although this podcast will have dropped after I've started. So still, though, it'll be kind of fun to see how we're all doing. Feel free to drop me a line as well. So, all right, if you're not following already, please follow. And I would love it if you share. The more that we get this message out there, not just every week, but especially today, the more we can all heal together and create the world that we want to see. All right, take care.